Hey, thanks for coming by to watch my video. Today I'm going to show you how to make your own reactive targets that are inexpensive, they're easy to make, they're a heck of a lot of fun to shoot, pretty durable. You don't need any special tools. But first, if you like the video, you learned something, or you just want to support my channel, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe. So let's get to it. Alright, we're out on the range today, and I'm going to show you how to make 3 different reactive targets. We have a up-down target, we have a lean-out target, and then we have the trigger target, the simple knockdown that triggers all the mechanisms. So we'll talk about the targets first, the lean-out and the up-downs. And then we'll get to the trigger mechanism and how it all ties together and how you can set them up all differently and have them all trigger each other in different sequences and how all that works. So let's talk about the up-down first. Okay, so this is a simple up-down target. It can either raise the target up and stay there, or it will raise the target up and then once it reaches its maximum rise, it will drop back down again. So as you tuck them in behind a barrel, you have limited opportunity to shoot at it. A pretty simple design. The base is 2x4s, and to be honest, I didn't even bother buying pressure treated lumber for the base, but you're probably going to want to paint it. I've had this target probably 3 or 4 years now, and somebody shot a piece of PVC out of it and I had to replace that once, but other than that, it's just held up perfectly. They're pretty durable as long as you don't shoot at them all the time. They do last. The natural position of the target is in the down position, okay? And we use a counterweight on the back like this that raises the target up, okay, and a trigger mechanism to let that go. So let's talk about how it's made. So as you can see, we have 2 boxes. Now I use 1x3s for most of the framing and everything else. So we have 2 boxes. We have a lower one that runs the entire span, and then we have the upper one, which is half the span. So this is important to make it this way, the geometry of it, because no matter where the target is, you want the target to stay vertical, like this. The target always stays straight up and down. If we didn't have this mechanism in here, when it was down, the target would be pointing at the ground, and when it was up, the target would lean back all the way like this. So this mechanism here keeps your target vertical the whole way. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take some measurements for you so you can get an idea of the size that this is. It's very tough to look at it. So let's take a look at this bottom, the main box that runs all the way across. Okay. Let's take a look at that. Sorry, I'm trying to do this holding the camera. So the main box, the lower box, is 48 inches. So 4 feet, nice and easy. And the upper box is 24, 25, 26, 27 inches. And we need some extra because it overhangs. It's not in the center. So basically what we have 48, so we're going to have a hole in the lower one right in the middle, okay, at 24 inches. And then this upper box is bigger, but we also want the hole at 24 inches so that they're the same size out of the front of the target. Okay, so you have a little bit overhang in the back. Now what we have here is, I want to say this is 1.25 inch PVC. Pretty sure it's 1.25 inch. It's definitely not inch. It's not 1.5 inches. I'm saying it's 1.25 inch PVC. Now, we got our end cap, so you're going to need... Now, generally, most of your targets are about 18 inches across. When I made this particular target, I made it pretty wide. So, outer to outer here, I made it 2 feet wide. Okay, so it's a little wider than it needs to be. So, you want to figure another 3 inches on here. So, 27 inches on these pipes, a couple end caps. Same thing out here, you're going to drill your 1.5 inches using a hole saw. And when it's even, like this, right, they're in the end, just like that. And you want, I have 2x4s here, drilled on the inside. And this is the mechanism that keeps your target upright. So you can get a different view of that. Okay. So basically all we're doing is we're putting a 2x4 in here. We're locking them across at about 18 inches. With another 1x3 across the front. It's wider on the outside. And you can mount your targets on here. So now, like I said, when you're making this, the front is heavier. There's a lot more mechanism on the front. Okay, so it's right in the center. We have the pivot point back here is right in the center, so the front is much heavier. Now, before we start, the first thing we're going to do is we want to decide how fast we want the target to drop when we have it drop away. And with that, you can see on the back here, I added another 2x4, a 1x3 as a stopper, and this board right here. Now that's your counterbalance for how fast your target will fall. If I took all that weight off, it would drop a lot faster. If I wanted to drop slower, I could just add a little more weight and in the back, and when the target disappears, it would drop slower because the weight would be more balanced. So, depending on how much weight you put in the back, depends on how fast the target falls. Now, as a counterweight, I just took these PVCs. Now, these are 1.5 inches, and I filled them with rocks and sand, and depending on how heavy you make these, determines how fast the target is going to come up. So, once you put that on, you'll see that's how fast the target will come up. If you make that much heavier, the target will rise even quicker. If you make it lighter, it'll rise slower. So those are your counterbalance mechanisms. Now, you have 2 choices when using this target. When the trigger comes on, if you want the target to stay up, you can see I have this 2x4 right here in the back that holds the counterweight in place. The 1x3 keeps it from rolling down. So once it gets triggered, it comes down, target comes up and stays up. Now, if I wanted this to be an up-down, all I have to do is just turn my 2x4 out of the way like this, and it would be triggered like this behind a barrel. And once it gets triggered, the target goes up, the counterbalance rolls off, and the target goes back down. So that is basically the mechanism. Another important part of this, I'm using 1x3s, and you can see there's a gap between these 2 boards right here. You need that gap, otherwise they'll pinch when they come down or go up. You want a remaining gap. If I can get a good view of it, you can see you still want a gap in there. If these holes here are too close together, they'll pinch and you won't get full swing. They look like they're about 4 inches apart. Yeah, because we're half and half. We're not full boards across because they're in the center. So we're looking at 4 inches apart, maybe even a little less. But when you drill those holes, you want to make sure that a gap remains in between so it doesn't pinch. That's very important. So that's basically how the up-down works. And again, there's some There is some 1x3s that I added in the front as cross member supports. That's all these are. You have your 2x4s in here to mount your target holder on. And like I said, these are free floating. This piece, this, and this, they're nailed together, but they're free floating on the board. They're not connected to the edge. They're not connected here. So this is actually free floating so that the target can go up and down. So that is your up and down. Okay, before we get into the trigger mechanism, let me just say that if you need a measurement that I left out, or you're curious about something, just go down in the comments, ask me what you need to know. I'll take whatever measurements that you need and answer any questions that you have so that you can put it together. Okay, the trigger mechanism, the release mechanism, is very simple. And what I've done is I've just taken two L brackets, as you can see right here. I screwed them in with a little piece of chain right here, and then I have these little steel cables that I made myself. You could just buy this cable at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's just steel cable. I find it's very smooth. It works great. You buy the little crimp ends and you can do what you want. But basically, it just sits right in the corner. I have a little cotter pin right here that I found works incredibly well. So when the trigger mechanism falls, it just pops and it goes up. That simple. And you can see the cotter pin, it has a long end and a short end. So I put the long end just being held right at the edge right there. So it's really a hair trigger, and it just, once it pops, it goes, and that's it. And these cables, I have different lengths of these. You can modify them. Sometimes I'll even put some paracord between, but you have to be careful with the paracord because it stretches, and if it stretches too much and it's not like a hair trigger, sometimes it won't go. But I find that if you do use these cables and to make adjustments to shorten and lengthen, I use some more of this. Oh, I just dropped the trigger mechanism. I use some of this chain that's very cheap, and you can get it by the feet, and then you can open a link. You can just open one of the links and make it longer, make it shorter, whatever you want to do. Okay, so the next target we're going to talk about is the lean out target. And this target is very simple to make. It has a base. You could see about 2 feet across, 2 feet back for stability. You got arms coming up, cross member, and you got a center piece that runs up the front with a piece of PVC level running straight through. Now what we have here is, let me back up a little bit. We have one other 2x4 here that runs with a hole in the middle, and it is, let me get my tape measure. So let's get a measurement here first. So off the ground, this one is 25 inches to the center of this. So 25 inches back here also. That's how high I have it. This long length of 2x4 with a single hole in it is 37 inches roughly. And the center of the hole that is drilled is, what is that, 17.5 inches, somewhere in there. So we have more, we have a little bit more on top. It's a little top heavy because the target's up there as well. And then what we have is a piece of PVC that are counterweights right here, like this. And what I found is that these little bricks with the holes in them, they work perfectly. Now, when I have this on there, you can see it stops right there because it's anchored. It has an anchor that stops it upright all the time. You can see there's a little eye hook down there, if you can see it, and an eye hook here with an anchor, and it holds it upright, just like that. So, there's different ways you can operate this target, and it works the same way, with the same trigger mechanism. So, if you wanted this target to lean out and stay out, it's very simple. What we do is we put an end cap on here just to hold that brick in place. Okay, so we put the end cap on there. Now the target naturally wants to lean out, just like that. Okay, we would leave the end cap on. Trigger mechanism, it works exactly the same with this piece of chain that comes over in between these two with a little cotter pin in there. When the trigger falls, it lets it go, and over it goes. Okay, and actually, when you're doing it this way, you don't even need the back. You don't need the back brick. So it would sit like this. The chain would be holding it, and when you pull the chain, which I'll demonstrate, it would go over, and it stays. If we want to have this target come back when it's done, we're going to put that brick on there like that. And what we would do is we would leave the end cap off, just like that. So now when it gets triggered, it flops all the way out, the brick falls off, and it returns back to center, just like so. Now, if you change the weight of this, you cut one of these bricks, make it a lesser weight, it would come out faster and return slower. So you can mess with the different counterweights on there. But like I said, it's a very, very simple design. So our trigger mechanism, or our simple knockdown, I also made this myself, is basically just a steel target with a base on a hinge with some cables. This is a little more expensive because you have to buy the steel to make, even though it's simple. I just made a simple base out of 2x4s. This was for something else. You don't need this. To totally disregard that because it doesn't even have to be in there. So I have a 2x4 running vertical, and it is just on some L brackets that I had laying around. You could use any kind of L bracket you want. And you're going to have to cut under it to make sure it clears. You can see that it's cut like a wedge, like that, so that it can come all the way down, like so, and clear. And then in the front, just as adjustments, right now they're actually screwed out too far, but I put a couple screws under there. You can see them right there, I think. You screw those in and out, and that determines how far forward the steel leans and how much it's going to take to knock it over. So if you did have a piece of good steel to use as your main column, that would be good. Either a a 2x2 piece of steel, something like that. That would be good. I just used a 2x4, but I actually had this 3/8 inch piece of U steel, so I just bolted that onto the 2x4 for longevity, because you do miss every now and then. So now we have cables. Now again, these are just steel rubber coated cables with a little S bracket and a little eye hook. So that when the target's set up, I leave the cables under the steel, and you can have one on either side. They can trigger multiple targets at the same time. So they stay under there like that. And they're out here. And then when the target goes, when the steel falls, they go back and they will trigger your targets just like anything else. So really is a little simple setup. You're going to want it as tall as you can. I think that's probably close to 36 inches to get enough pull on your cables, and these cables have to be anchored here. If they're anchored back here, you won't get any pull whatsoever. It'll never change the distance, because this distance becomes longer, but this distance to the top always remains the same. So you can't have an eye hook back here. The eye hook must be here, because as we bring it closer, the distance from the top of the target to this corner is short. As it lays down, that distance gets longer. Like I said, the distance from here to the top of the target always remains the same, so you won't get any pull. So you have to have the eyelets out here. They could go down on the sides, they can go over here, they can go over there, wherever they are. But your pull point has to be out in front, or it won't work. And again, as simple as can be. I put a block on it because when you're hitting that big piece of steel, it moves around. I put a cement block on there. It also helps protect the wood from splatter, from the bullet splatter that comes down, and it holds it nicely. So that works very well. All right, so we'll talk about different ways that we can hook up these targets, and I'll show you some different techniques. Different ways that you can rig these targets for timing and how they go. Obviously, the easiest way is just a direct hookup. You can run cables off, you know, you can put two on one side, you can put one on either side, and when the target falls, they'll all get triggered, and they'll all come up together at the same time. The other way you can do this is, and this is the way I like to do it for speed-wise, especially when I'm using the up and down, so they're going to disappear, to buy yourself a little more time. I'll connect the targets in a series. So what happens is, either I'll use one side, or I'll have two come up at once, but one will stay. You can rig them up in 100 different ways. But if you want them to come up alternately, or in some sort of an order, what I'll do is I will connect one of these to another up-down, okay? And when the target will be down like so, and it gets triggered, it goes up. What I'll do is I'll connect on this side, coming off, I have a piece of paracord here, okay? And what I'll do, I'll leave a little gap of line so that it doesn't trigger there, it doesn't trigger there. When the target reaches about right there, it'll begin to pull the cable like that, and then it'll trigger that one. So this target will be virtually or almost all the way up before the next one even starts to rise. And that's very good, because especially when you're using the up downs, so this one comes up, there it is, you're shooting, and when it gets to here, it's going to drop back down again and disappear. So you really don't want them to come up at the same time and disappear at the same time, because you got to be really fast. So you can delay it by putting a little space in that line. So, I mean, it could trigger, it won't trigger immediately, but you could trigger it here, or just right at the very end, and then it'll trigger. So when this one reaches the top, as this one's falling, that one is now coming into view. And you can do the same thing from this one to the lean out or any other one, and connect them all in series. So you use this motion, the up motion of the up down, to trigger the next target in the line. And you can also do the same thing with the lean out, that when it leans this way, it will pull the trigger for the next target and trigger that one. So when this one gets to about here, the next one triggers, it goes back, and then this one's starting to come up. So you can hook them up in all different series, and if they're going to stay up, if they're all going to stay up and you're going to leave the counterbalances on, they can all trigger simultaneously. All three will pop up and stay up, and then you get to them as you get to them. You can have one go up and down and the other two stay up, whatever you want to do. So all right, so I hope you like my video. Like I said, you could probably make all three of these for under $100. You know, because you have to buy the steel, this is probably about $10 worth of stuff on here. But the steel adds more to the cost of the knockdown. You could probably come up with different ways of using steel to just fall and pull a cable if you wanted to, or if you had to. But like I said, I mean, you can make three of these for under $100, and they are a lot of fun to shoot. It's good training, helps you work on your speed, and we just have a ball with them. So if you do have any questions, put it down in the comments. I'll be happy to answer, take measurements, and help you out getting them done. And I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe. It'll really help me out. And tune in for some more videos. Thank you very much for watching.